The time between starting a business and its eventual success or failure is marked by a seemingly endless series of ups and downs. With patience, endurance, and no small amount of luck, you may find that each of your lows is less of a setback while each high pushes you a bit further. This back and forth is normal and even necessary for growth, so what if you embraced it instead of trying to avoid it? In The Messy Middle, 2018, Scott Belsky argues that if you charge headfirst into the challenges you'll face during these drawn-out middle years, you'll develop the skills and insights you'll need to ultimately realize your goals. Belsky explores the challenging and often overlooked middle phase of entrepreneurial projects. He argues that while we often focus on the beginning and the end of success stories we admire, the middle is where the most important work happens, and it's where the real learning and development occurs. The problems you'll face during this time will force you to fine-tune your approach to success while developing the resilience you'll need to see it through. The middle may be uncomfortable, but Belsky insists that it yields benefits that will make your success more likely in the end. Belsky is an entrepreneur and investor with extensive experience in the tech field and creative industries. He's best known as the co-founder of Behance, an online platform for showcasing creative work, which was acquired by Adobe in 2012. He would later serve as Chief Product Officer and Executive Vice President. Belsky is a venture partner at Benchmark, a Silicon Valley venture capital firm, and he was an early investor in several well-known companies such as Uber, Pinterest, and Warby Parker. In addition to The Messy Middle, he is the author of Making Ideas Happen, 2010, about seeing creative endeavors through to the finish. In this guide, we'll explore the difficulties you'll encounter once your startup or project gets going, but after your initial excitement wears off. We'll describe the skills you'll need to cultivate as well as some weaknesses to beware of. We'll discuss how to keep your team motivated, how to be patient through years of uncertainty, and how Belsky says you should cope with success if and when it finally comes. We'll also cover writings from other business experts who expand on Belsky's ideas, provide concrete steps on how to implement them, or come at Belsky's topic from a different point of view. We'll discuss different mindsets, both intellectual and emotional, that can help navigate the difficulties Belsky describes, and how to think about business success in terms that aren't absolute or unrealistic. The road forward is a maze. Most business leaders like to brag about how their companies started and how much success they found in the end, but Belsky points out that recounting these dramatic moments reveals little about their actual journeys. The time between launching an idea and seeing it realized isn't glamorous, and many successful entrepreneurs never talk about it, because doing so requires a level of vulnerability. However, skipping over the important middle years leaves aspiring entrepreneurs with an incomplete and unrealistic picture of what to expect. Belsky discusses two challenges during these middle years as well as the importance of celebrating progress even when your ultimate goal is far away. Short-form note: though Belsky discusses the twists and turns you'll face on the way to becoming a successful entrepreneur, he doesn't directly acknowledge the high rate at which most entrepreneurial startups fail. In the E-Myth Revisited, Michael E. Gerber points out that 40% of new businesses fail within the first year and 80% fail within 5 years. Like Belsky, Gerber disparages romantic notions about how businesses are born and what it takes to succeed, but he places the blame for most failures on business owners who focus on technical expertise and product development rather than improving their business skills. According to Gerber, an entrepreneur must play the roles of technician, visionary, and pragmatist all at once. The first challenge an entrepreneur faces is dealing with uncertainty. When you start a new project or venture, you have no way of knowing whether it will succeed. Belsky argues that leaders must function without certainty and let the growth process play out. Part of this means resisting the urge to seek easy or simplistic solutions to business problems. This is an issue Belsky struggled with himself. When growing his business felt like a never-ending uphill battle without a clear path forward, he had to fight the urge to sweep problems under the rug or settle for easy workaround solutions. He argues that patching over problems with easy fixes will often lead you to overlook truly original ideas that might make your business stand out. Short-form note: one danger of uncertainty that Belsky doesn't touch on is that you might find it hard to make decisions at all. However, indecision isn't a luxury business leaders can afford. In Extreme Ownership, former U.S. Navy SEALs Jocko Willink and Leif Babin argue that part of a leader's responsibility is to lead their team decisively, and in uncertain circumstances, imperfect decisions are better than none at all. There will be many times when you'll have to make choices with limited information, and all you can do is make an educated guess based on your knowledge and experience. While all your decisions may not be perfect, being decisive will at least reinforce your team's confidence in your ability to lead them. Day-to-day entrepreneurship isn't fun. Belsky argues that as an entrepreneur, if you can accept uncertainty as a fact of life, Part of your mind will always be working on creative solutions to your business problems. Belsky attests to this from personal experience. During his time as an entrepreneur, part of his mind remained focused on work no matter what else was going on in his life.
Though intrusive at times, this ongoing mental work was a vital part of making good decisions.
To manage this constant background noise, he recommends focusing on the individual problems before you, such as fixing a design flaw in your product, while keeping an eye on your broader concerns, such as the ultimate goal and financial health of your business. Short-form note: experts are divided on whether the mental, parallel processing Belsky describes is even neurologically possible. In Brain Rules, biologist John Medina says it isn't, that diverting your attention and then refocusing takes an enormous amount of brain power and lessens your ability to complete anything.
In other words, multitasking doesn't work.
However, in hyperfocus, productivity expert Chris Bailey disagrees to some extent. He writes that your brain can focus on multiple simple tasks at a time, or even one simple and one complex task. However, doing so runs the risk of attention overload. If you try to focus on too many things, they start to crowd each other out of your brain's working memory. The second challenge is dealing with setbacks and extended periods of hardship. To be clear, entrepreneurship isn't fun. Belsky emphasizes that you and your team must accept discomfort as a necessary part of pursuing your goals. After all, many successful companies emerged from failed initial concepts, and your ability to pivot and start over, despite the psychological toll it takes, is crucial to success. To achieve this resilience, you need a deep commitment to your overall mission without becoming attached to one specific approach. Since this kind of resilience is so important, Belsky suggests that when hiring your team, you should evaluate your candidate's ability to deal with uncertainty, challenges, and self-doubt. Short-form note: the discomfort of dealing with setbacks and pivots may not be as bad as Belsky suggests if you make it a point to regularly confront it. In The Lean Startup, Eric Ries argues that because startups have limited resources, it's best to find pivot points quickly if your current direction isn't working. Therefore, Ries says you should have regular pivot or persevere meetings, from once every few weeks to once every few months, depending on your startup's volatility. At these meetings, you should have a firm definition of what failure looks like in the context of your business's overall mission, so you'll know when the time has come to change direction, taking some of the emotional strain out of the business equation. Celebrate when you can. Resilience can be hard to cultivate because humans evolved to prioritize short-term gains. Leaders must recognize this and find ways to help their teams stay motivated during long-term projects. Belsky says it's important to provide your team with regular doses of positive reinforcement. Otherwise, you and your team may feel like you're spinning your wheels. Traditional measures of success, like customer growth or financial gains, are often absent in the middle years of a venture, and the lack of external validation can be demoralizing. Therefore, you'll have to create motivation by celebrating small victories and milestones, even if only by throwing a pizza party when your team successfully adds a new feature to your product. Short-form note: if you can sell your team on your startup's larger goals, then the reinforcement Belsky describes doesn't have to be superficial. In Empowered, Marty Kagan and Chris Jones explain the motivational benefits of letting your team members take personal ownership of their objectives. This requires giving them some autonomy over how they achieve their goals, but when your team feels responsible for achieving your startup's wider mission, when they start thinking like owners, they base their focus and sense of satisfaction on the outcome of their work, making them less dependent on individual rewards. However, this mindset demands transparency. Workers need to know whether their efforts are actually helping the business. However, Belsky cautions against celebrating false victories or giving positive feedback at the expense of confronting hard truths. Focusing only on positive outcomes or overstating praise can lead you to ignore problems. Instead, strive for an objective view of your venture's progress, considering both its positive and negative trends. Look at your business from multiple points of view, such as those of investors or potential customers, and you'll be able to keep a realistic view of your progress and the challenges still ahead. Be honest with yourself and your team about your business's difficulties. Don't hide bad news while you celebrate progress. Short-form note: being honest about your progress may be harder than you think, and for different reasons than Belsky describes. You may assume that tracking the right metrics will reveal whether your products will be profitable or how to make them better. But in competing against luck, Clayton Christensen argues that the numbers aren't as objective as they seem. How you collect data often depends on subjective decisions, such as what questions you ask on customer surveys. Because the results look like hard numbers, they can give an illusion of objectivity that may not be as firm as it appears. Therefore, be aware of any factors that might skew your interpretation of the numbers before reporting success or failure to your team. Stay aware of your strengths and weaknesses. To stay objective about your business's progress, you need to also be realistic about yourself. Belsky emphasizes the critical importance of self-awareness as you deal with the challenges of bringing your ideas to fruition. Knowing who you are and how you react to stress can keep you on an even keel through ups and downs, leave you open to other people's ideas, and turn your uniqueness into a competitive edge. Belsky writes that understanding your emotional responses and values lets you maintain perspective during both the good times and the bad. During periods of success, some people develop an overblown sense of their abilities and become less receptive to other people's advice. You may also ignore warning signs that you don't want to acknowledge. This overconfidence can lead to poor decisions and even a disconnect from reality. Conversely, during hard times, you might become defensive and blame others for your problems. If you're able to recognize, and hopefully curb, these behaviors in yourself, you're more likely to maintain a good sense of judgment and take appropriate actions when you need to. Short-form note. While Belsky describes the pitfalls of not understanding your emotions, the authors of the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership go into detail about how to manage them. First, they write that emotions are simply physical sensations that aren't inherently good or bad, and neither do they define you. The authors explain that all your emotional responses arise from a handful of primal feelings such as happiness, anger, and fear. They argue that you can release your emotions by taking actions that appropriately express them, and that at the same time you should interpret your emotions to figure out what they're trying to tell you. Beyond making you a more effective leader, this process can also help you live a balanced life. The benefits of self-awareness. Your emotional awareness isn't just good for you, it's also good for your business. For instance, being able to moderate your reactions during your venture's ups and downs can help you stay open to feedback and criticism, which you need as a leader to make informed decisions and avoid critical mistakes. Belsky notes that the most successful entrepreneurs are those who can absorb input from others without becoming overly defensive. Plus, if you can notice your own defensiveness, you'll also learn to spot when people on your team are having a similar reaction. That will help you guide them through the good and bad times by knowing how much emotionality is guiding the decisions they're making for your project. Short-form note. Belsky presents the problem of handling criticism without becoming defensive as a matter of emotional control, but in Principles, Life and Work, Ray Dalio tackles the subject from the perspective of truth-seeking as a top priority. He writes that when you're struggling, the first trap you fall into is that of wishing reality was different than it is. Instead, you should embrace reality while accepting the possibility that your perspective is wrong. This requires you to set aside your ego and acknowledge any blind spots you may have. Dalio's solution to accomplish both of these, one that also aligns with Belsky's advice, is to be totally receptive to other people's input and recognize that good ideas can come from anywhere, not just from you. Another benefit of knowing yourself is that you can leverage your uniqueness to stand out from your competitors. Belsky encourages embracing your one-of-a-kind perspective as a source of potential innovations and breakthroughs. It may be tempting to establish your business in terms of what's been done before, but conformity stifles new ideas. Belsky argues that you should lean into your distinctive vision instead of imitating your competitors. For instance, you might give your product a design that's eye-catching to some while off-putting to others. Your ideas may strike some people as quirky, weird, or too far from the norm, but unique ideas will attract those who resonate strongly with your vision. Short-form note. The unique or strange ideas that Belsky describes don't have to take the shape of quirky new products or an oddball ad campaign. In Reinventing Organizations, Frederick Laloux describes how the Dutch nursing company Buurtzorg became successful because of its unusual organizational structure. Instead of functioning as a normal corporate hierarchy, Buurtzorg organized itself into fully autonomous, self-governing teams that replaced managers with strictly advisory coaches. Though Buurtzorg's uniqueness isn't as outwardly visible as some of the quirks that Belsky might suggest, Laloux argues that its unusual approach to management allows it to stand out in terms of the quality healthcare it provides. Stay focused but flexible. In addition to knowing your strengths, you also have to work to constantly improve yourself as a business leader while nursing your startup through its growing pains. In particular, Belsky says to work on your ability to focus, make instinctive decisions, and plan for the future while remaining flexible about the inevitable changes you're bound to face in this time. Belsky writes that to be successful, you must focus your efforts and say no to distractions. This can be tricky because as your business grows, you'll encounter more opportunities and have to choose between them. Belsky advises analyzing opportunities based on whether they match up with your goals or will help you develop a skill. By being selective, you don't waste your time and energy on pursuits that won't pay off for your business. However, you must also learn to make those decisions without getting bogged down by overthinking. Sometimes it's best to go with your instinct rather than endlessly weighing your options. Surviving a growing startup's middle years requires constantly improving your business instincts and decision-making skills. Belsky suggests seeking advice from sources who don't always agree and using it to refine your intuition. He also emphasizes the value of doubt to equip you to make decisions in the face of uncertainty. Lastly, to make good decisions, you have to maintain your ability to think creatively. Belsky recommends blocking out time to tap into your creativity by turning off all your devices and letting your mind wander. Otherwise, your mind will stay reactive to every phone call and email notification, all of which stifles innovative thinking. Perspectives on focus. Belsky references many skills to learn and make use of in relation to staying focused on your business priorities. That's because the concept of focus is very broad. Let's explore how other experts on productivity and the brain have addressed the topic. One way to define focus is as selective attention. In his book Focus, psychologist Daniel Goleman contrasts open awareness and selective attention as two mental states your brain engages in. Open awareness is fluid, passive attention in which you're not focusing on one specific task, whereas selective attention is the effortful focus you use to filter through the flood of sensory stimuli and narrow your attention to what is relevant. As Belsky suggests, selective attention is the mode your brain engages in to decide what's relevant to your current task and what's a distraction you should try to avoid. Another way to look at focus is as deep work. In his book Deep Work, computer scientist Cal Newport discusses focus as uninterrupted concentration on a task that pushes your cognitive abilities to their limit. Newport explains that skills you need to succeed in the modern economy, like complex problem-solving, data analysis, and computer programming, require deep work to learn and execute. Deep work is also what you'll have to engage in to improve the business instincts and decision-making skills that Belsky highlights. Business success also requires planning, and the willingness to adapt as circumstances change. Belsky suggests you view planning as a thought exercise that prepares you for your business's unpredictability. However, you shouldn't expect your business's growth to follow your original plan. Instead, regularly reevaluate your progress and adjust your plans, letting go of projects and ideas that no longer serve your goals, even if you've already put significant resources into them. It's natural to value a project that you've invested time and money into, but clinging to past investments can prevent you from making the changes your business may need so it can flourish. Short-form note. In addition to the business situations Belsky describes, flexible planning has long been vital to success in military operations. In Made to Stick, Chip and Dan Heath relate the adage that no plan of battle survives contact with the enemy. In business, this means that no business plan survives the real-world market unchanged. The Heath brothers explain that the U.S. Army distills all aspects and details of a plan to a central point, the commander's intent, that defines an intended outcome. In a business sense, your intent may be to reduce costs or open new markets, so when you periodically reevaluate your plan, use your overall intent as a guide so you don't become attached to specific details as to how to achieve it. Keep your team on track. It's unlikely that your new startup venture will be a one-person operation, and the burden of pushing through the hard middle years shouldn't fall on your shoulders alone. Instead, achieving your overall business goals will doubtless be a team effort. Here, we'll discuss how your team will need to maintain their collective motivation, stay focused on the tasks most important to their success, and avoid the distractions that will try to drag them down. Motivating your team. We often think of marketing as something directed at potential customers, but during the growing phase of your business, you must constantly market your vision to your team. Belsky suggests using graphics, slogans, and regular communications to reinforce your company's key goals and milestones. You can create internal advertising that highlights your team's achievements while pointing them toward the next steps in their process. By consistently promoting your vision and making progress visible, you keep your business's reason for existence at the top of your team members' minds. If done well, this will maintain enthusiasm and give people a clear sense of how their work contributes to the bigger picture. Short-form note. Belsky presents team motivation in terms of advertising, but in Empowered, Kagan and Jones recommend something different, that you lead like a coach. To coach your workers toward success, you have to inspire them as a team and as individuals, create personal development plans for each member, and maintain a constant dialogue as everyone moves forward. Instead of selling them on your business goals, as Belsky suggests, you should motivate them by posing challenges that encourage your team members to think creatively and stretch their abilities. According to Kagan and Jones, this increases buy-in and motivation more than simply aligning workers with your ideas. Coaching makes business success personal. However you achieve motivation, Your team needs it to stay focused on the most important tasks. Belsky points out that when progress feels slow, teams often dwell on small, easy problems instead of more significant issues. For instance, your team might fix an app's fonts and color schemes instead of addressing functionality problems. This behavior comes from our deep-seated desire for the gratification of finishing a task, but it also leads to neglecting big problems that impact a project's success. Belsky suggests that you clearly identify which tasks are the most significant and require your team to spend 4/5 of their time on important goals before moving to the quick, easy problems. Though difficult tasks take longer to achieve, explain to your team that accomplishing these tasks will be ultimately more rewarding. Short-form note: the ratio Belsky describes, that your team should spend 80% of their time on high-priority goals, appears to be a spiritual descendant of Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto's rule that 80% of outputs stem from 20% of inputs. In the 80-20 principle, Richard Koch explains how this ratio appears in many areas of life. For example, we derive 80% of our happiness from 20% of our life experiences, and 80% of our best relationships are with 20% of the people we know. Koch asserts that you can apply the 80-20 rule to clear out waste in your business and focus your energy on the projects that matter most. In Belsky's middle years of startup growth, the 80-20 rule helps you eliminate the needless work that slowly accumulates over time. Bureaucracy and organizational debt. If you avoid major issues for too long in favor of making small corrections here and there, your business will build up organizational debt.
Belsky writes that organizational debt is the buildup of hard decisions that leaders avoid, often because of an aversion to conflict.
Organizational debt manifests as retaining workers you should let go, maintaining outdated processes, or putting off needed restructuring. To reduce or prevent these problems from occurring, Belsky says to confront your challenges rather than working around them. Make it clear that this duty also falls on your team to identify and eliminate inefficiencies by being honest with themselves and seeking continuous improvement. Short-form note: the organizational debt that Belsky warns against is similar to the concept of technical debt, a software industry term for issues that designers put off solving in favor of short-term workarounds. Technical debt takes the form of software bugs, wasted resources, and misleading documentation, and incurring it lets developers move ahead on projects that are at least partially working. The assumption many developers make is that they or someone else in the future will resolve the problems they leave unfinished. But left unchecked, technical debt leads to faulty products and disgruntled customers. Organizational debt is arguably worse than technical debt, since it directly affects the company as a whole. The larger your business grows, the more likely it is to become bureaucratic, focusing on rules and procedures while slowing down innovation. Belsky advises against blaming bureaucracy, since it's often needed to keep a big business afloat. Instead, the key to innovation in such environments is to keep projects moving incrementally forward and take responsibility for maintaining momentum. As with reducing organizational debt, this job doesn't solely fall on the business owner. Belsky suggests that anyone on your team, regardless of their position, can drive progress with the right motivation, which follows from your job to keep all team members invested in achieving your company's goals. Short-form note: the incremental progress that Belsky recommends will surely move you forward, but there is another option: a design sprint. In Sprint, Jake Knapp, John Zaratsky, and Braden Cowitz describe the idea as an event in which a team is given one project to delve into for a week, while postponing all other meetings and bureaucratic obligations. A sprint lets your team focus all of its output on a single task, which can jumpstart momentum on a particular problem. A design sprint begins by identifying the outcome you want to accomplish, gathering ideas on how to achieve it, and narrowing your team's focus to a few priorities. At the end of the week, your team will feel a boost from having achieved an important stepping stone. The long haul.
The highs and lows of the road to success aren't the only struggles you're going to face.
According to Belsky, the chief factor that makes growing a business so difficult is the sheer amount of time it takes. Surmounting this barrier takes determination, a great deal of patience, and a curious mind that can find its own rewards in the midst of the process long before you reach the end. Determination. Belsky argues that short-term thinking is only natural, which makes it hard to focus on long-term goals and strategies. That's why enduring the challenges of growing a startup requires tremendous fortitude. However, to sustain your momentum over the long haul, you can't rely on personal praise, good reviews, or even other people's understanding. Though it's only natural to crave those things, not getting noticed for all your hard work could easily frustrate you and cloud your judgment if that's your only motive for success. Therefore, Belsky says that instead of relying on external validation, your motivation must come from within. Short-form note: Belsky's advice to create your own motivation may sound hard to do, but in The Art of Impossible, Stephen Kotula points out that from a brain science perspective, achieving intrinsically motivated goals generates more pleasurable neurochemicals than achieving goals tied to external motivation. The trick is to identify what your internal motivations are and align them with the goals of your business. Kotler recommends exploring your personal interests and finding ways to link them together. You should also expand your social network to include people whose goals complement yours to engage a positive feedback cycle of social support and mutually motivated progress, whether in business or your personal life. Patience and curiosity. To endure the long stretch between beginning a project and seeing it succeed, you'll need a lot of patience. Belsky points out that many business success stories ignore the need for patience, giving entrepreneurs unrealistic expectations, when some seemingly overnight successes come after years of persistence. While you may have conceived your business strategy quickly, it can only be carried out over a long time. Therefore, you need to adjust your expectations and how you measure your company's progress. Short-form note: though your urge may be to push yourself and your team to get results as soon as possible, the best way to cultivate the long-term patience that Belsky recommends may be for you to slow down. In The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, Pastor John Mark Comer argues that when your life is lively, it brims with meaningful purpose, but when you're merely busy,